Morning guys, welcome back. Today we're going to look at building an XLR cable. This is a cable capable of balanced audio transmission, has 3 conductors and 3 pins, and for the most part it's going to be used as a mic cable. Now there are other uses for this, DMX to transmit lighting data. The connector gets used on speaker cable with 2 females. AES, which is a digital audio protocol, transmits multiple, usually 2 channels of audio down XLR. So it's not just a mic cable, but the ones we're building today will be. Before we start, I thought I'd show you a finished one, just to get an idea of what it should look like. I mean, it's a pretty clean setup. It's a very durable, tough connector, and the best of them is this Neutrik NCMMX and MCFFX. This is a Neutrik line 3-pin connector. It's top of the game. There are some other companies that make connectors just as good as these, but this tends to be the most used industry standard. Not the only one, just the most used in the top of the line. So this is a finished XLR cable on a nice quality Belden star quad. We're going to use star quad cable today, which we'll talk a little bit about down the line. For the moment, I want to show you the parts of an XLR cable. So firstly, a quick look at the cable. Now we're using Canair, and sometimes we'll be using L2 and sometimes we'll be using L4. This particular one is a L4 with a foil shield. This is pretty quick to build, this one. There's other types of star quad that take a lot longer to build. Now, I'm briefly just going to show you inside the cable. This is the cable here. It's got 4 conductors. It's got 2 blues and 2 whites. I go white hot. White is hot as the sun. Blue is cold, like cold water. The ground wire here is just a wire that's woven around the 2 twisted pairs. This is one way of additional noise reduction on a cable. The other way, which takes a lot longer to solder up, the ground wire is actually a shield, and it's woven in a concentric ring around the entire setup. What that means is it takes another 5 minutes per connector to unpick the braid or the shield back from the cable. We'll have to do this today because we're going to build on both types of cable, both types of star quad. There are cheaper types of XLR that don't have 2 conductors on the blue and 2 on the white. They just got 1. That's a non-star quad, and it doesn't take advantage of this idea of twisted pair for noise reduction. So that's the cable, black mic cable, and this particular one is called, I don't know if you can see that, star quad L4E5AT. This is the bushing, this is the chuck, this is the insert, and this is the housing. Now, I kind of made up my own names for these because I only found out the official names for these parts last year. Before that, I used to call this the boot, this the gland, this the insert, and this the barrel. It doesn't really matter what you call them, as long as you can identify them and communicate with other people who can. So this particular one is the male, and it has a male pin block. I'm just going to show you the female. Hopefully that won't roll away. The female is very similar, just has a female pin block or a female insert. The boot or bushing is the same, the gland or chuck is the same, and the barrel or housing differs as well. So just the pin block and the barrel. In addition to the connectors, you need a little bit of heat shrink. So you'll need some small heat shrink to isolate the ground wire, to put a bit of shielding on it. Now, some people shield all their wires and all their soldering. I don't. I just generally heat shrink anything that's exposed, and some transparent heat shrink to go over the top. This is so we can label the cable as per university property or a company property or your own property, and stick some heat shrink over the top of it so it'll keep and the label won't fall off. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is tools. Now, some people will use a clamp for this. I actually like to use one of these. Now, these are XLR connectors, and they're panel mount XLR connectors. And what I've done is inserted them into a block of wood just to hold the connector, and I've even got one here in the middle, just a drilled hole for a TRS. I just call this a cable block. It's for making cables. So there's this. You're going to need some sort of cutter. Side cutters are most suitable. You can probably get away with scissors, and if you get in trouble, have a Stanley knife handy and ready to go. You'll need a soldering iron. I've got a cheap one from JCar. This is a $24 soldering iron. It does the job just fine. And at the very end, you'll need a heat gun. Now, the camera's too close to show you the whole thing, but this is just a normal everyday heat gun like you'd find at Bunnings. Also some solder. I like 0.7 or 1mm resin core solder in the yellow or green packet from JCar. Now the first thing you do before you do anything at all is put your boots or your bushings on and your heat shrink. So heat shrink first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bit of this transparent heat shrink. I'm going to cut off about 5 centimeters and I'm going to push this onto the cable. Then I'm going to grab the boot, push that onto the cable, grab the other end, grab the other boot, and push that onto the cable. You need to do this first. It's the same with any soldered style cable. So once you've got those on, I'm going to get you to trim about 3 centimeters back off the jacket of both ends. Now just take a pair of scissors or side cutters and gently rotate them around the cable and pull off the rubber. You can also use a cable stripper if you have one. It's kind of handy to learn to do this with scissors because you'll have them lying around pretty much no matter where you are. So this is how it looks when it first gets stripped. It's got a cloth on the outside, gives the cable flexibility. It's got a ground wire, 2 blues and 2 whites. Now before we do anything, we need to prepare this wire for soldering. So we'll prepare the wire first. We call that tinning. So get a pair of scissors and just cut away the fabric so that you're just looking at the wire. And what I'm going to get you to do is strip each of these colors back about 1 centimeter or just under 1 centimeter, closer to 8mm. So I've stripped away about 8 millimeters off all the wires, and then what I want to get you to do is this. You take the 2 white wires together on each cable end and spin them around, twist them together. Do the same with the blues. And then I'll get you to twist and spin the ground wire as well, just to make it into sort of one piece. You'll find it's not twisted very well and it'll separate. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to tin these wires to prepare them for inserting into the cable. So to do that, we need to warm up a soldering iron, and then we're going to coat the wires, including the joined ones, the whites and the blues, with a little layer of solder. Okay, so take your solder in your left hand or right hand, depending if you're left or right-handed. Take your iron in your other hand and just hold them together and run them together over the length of the wire. Once you've got a bit of solder on the wire, just run it back and forth. This is called tinning. Alright, once all your 3 wires are tinned, we need to do a little bit of prep on the actual connector. So I'm just going to move that out of the way, bring in the block, get rid of the cable. We're going to start with a female connector. So insert it into your block. This will hold it. And you'll see these 3 buckets. Now these are designed to be able to be crimped with pliers. I don't like to do that. I like to keep them free so I can unsolder this connector if I ever need to. Now what we need to do is fill these buckets full of solder. So stick the soldering iron in and push the wire down into it. Now they're quite deep on the female connector, so it takes a little while and quite a bit of solder. They're not so deep on the male connector. Now have a look closely and you'll see these pins are numbered. 1, 2 and 3. Pin 2 is hot, 1 is ground and 3 is cold. Alright, so now we're going to just move that out the way. So now we're going to actually do our soldering on our connector, and this is how it's done. So here's our cable right here. I'm going to trim all these back together. So there's only about 3 mil exposed on each of the colors. And then I'm going to get a little piece of small heat shrink and slide it over the ground wire. Ground is 1, we'll do that first. So now twist the ground wire, bend it back so that you're only dealing with the ground wire. Find your bucket labeled 1, melt the solder and push the wire into the bucket and take the soldering iron away. Hold it for 3 seconds and then push the heat shrink down onto the bucket. So we've done our ground wire. Now we're going to do the next one across, which in this case is blue. So heat the bucket until the solder's melted, push the wire in and hold it for 3 seconds. Repeat the process with the white. Heat, push it in, hold it for 3 seconds, and we're done. So that's the soldering done. So now that we have the soldering done, we can actually put the actual barrel together. Now, as you can see, the ground wire is protected from shorting against the other two, and everything's in the right place. So blue is pin 3, so that's cold. White is hot, that's pin 2, and the ground wire is pin 1. So now we take our chuck and hold. There's a place where the chuck actually fits in to the insert. And then we take our outer barrel or housing and we push this together until the insert gets all the way to the end, and then we push the bushing and screw the whole thing together, and we end up with a finished female XLR. The male is much the same way, except perceptually when you're looking down at the insert with the pins on it, pins 2 and 1 are the opposite way round, just perceptually. So when you look down on it, you're not putting the ground on this one. We'd be putting the ground on my right hand side. On that one we'd putting the ground on my left hand side, but the numbers are still labeled, so 1 is always 1. This is a proper star quad with a braided shield, this particular one. This isn't the one we just worked on, but it'll show you the process. So you have your boot or bushing, it's on, and your insert is soldered on. Then you take your chuck, which I used to call a gland, and you insert it over the wire, and you slide it down to the insert until the 2 flaps sit in the groove. When they do, it'll all line up. You then push your bushing or boot over the top, but not all the way. Get your barrel. Now, the barrel can only go a certain way, so you need to loosely sit it on and rotate it until you feel it go. Once it goes, it'll slide all the way in until your insert is right at the very end, and then you can screw the bushing or the boot on at the end. So with the male, very similar process. We have our boot or bushing there. We have our insert, and we have our chuck. We grab our chuck and slide that into the connector till the flaps line up. Grab the barrel, find the screw end of the barrel, goes into the cable, loosely fit it on, rotate it till it pushes in further. Right, there it goes, pushes in further, pushes in all the way, and then slide that down and screw it all together. Now the last part, which I haven't shown you, it's pretty straightforward, is just get a label maker, print out your chosen label, put it on the cable here. Make sure it's on the male end of the cable, not the female, because we don't want labels to show up on camera on corporate events. So it should be on this one. And stick your label there, slide the heat shrink down and give it a few seconds with the heat gun, and you're done.